Hello, I'm Bruce DePoy. Coming up, Jeb Bush says Democrats have an edge over Republicans when it comes to the African-American vote because Democrats are always offering black people free stuff. Just the latest in a string of ill-advised remarks from the GOP establishment favorite. What would compel someone to make such a statement? We'll ask the Reverend Braylon Hagler and Republican strategist Raynard Jackson. Then, Metro riders could find themselves inconvenienced for months because of that transformer fire along the blue, orange, and silver lines. We'll get the latest, and we'll talk about WMATA's general manager search. And joining us will be WAMU reporter Martin DeCaro.
From News Channel 8, this is News Talk with Bruce DePoy.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. It is so great to have you with us today, and it's great to be back with you after one last encounter with the beach. Great to be back with you today. Jeb Bush has stepped in it again, this time telling a town hall meeting in South Carolina that Democrats have an edge over the Republican Party when it comes to luring African-American voters. The reason, he says, is that Democrats are always promised minority groups, blacks in particular, free stuff.
Republicans get 4 to 7% maybe of the African-American vote for president. Those are kind of the numbers that I hear about. If you double that, you're still at a low number, right? But if you double that, you win elections in places like Ohio and Virginia. And we should make that case because our message is one of hope and aspiration. It isn't one of division and get in line and we'll take care of you with free stuff. Our message is one that is uplifting, that says you can achieve earned success. We're on your side.
Governor Bush has since tried to clarify his comment, but critics are already comparing it to the 47% comment that got GOP nominee Mitt Romney into so much trouble 4 years ago. Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. called the remark outrageous. Joining us now, Reverend Braylon Hagler. He's senior pastor at Plymouth Congregational United Church of Christ and a progressive advocate in the district. Also with us, Republican strategist and activist Raynard Jackson. Gentlemen, it is great to have you here. Thanks very much for your time. Reverend Hagler, let me begin with you. What thoughts did you first have, and what thoughts have you had since you first heard Governor Bush speak, say those words?
It's part of playing into the old racial politics that's a part of the nation. If you look at it right now in terms of what's happening on the Republican side, is that there is a race to the bottom. There's an attempt to kind of use racial code words and covert words that sort of point folks in a direction that is not a real direction. For example, you know, we can remember that Reagan goes to Mississippi and announces and uses racial code words, and it goes on and on continuously throughout the time. Even Clinton, for that matter, when he took on the Sister Soldier piece, that was a racial code word, a racial stance. This one is saying what basically conservatives in this country believe, and that's what they want to do, is tap into the white angry voter by saying that blacks and other people of color are lazy, they're looking for handouts, and basically the only reason that they vote and turn out and vote for Democrats is because of the handouts that Democrats continue to give them. It's a stereotype, because when you look at it, blacks have built this country. Blacks built Washington, D.C., right? On forced labor, slave labor. So there's nothing lazy about us. The fact is that there's a structure that's been put in place called institutional racism and governmental racism that makes sure that opportunities are not afforded, particularly black people.
Raynard Jackson.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you got a paramedic on standby, Bruce, because I happen to agree with most of what you said. Don't do it now. But I would make one I would distinguish one thing. Jeb Bush has no history of playing racial politics. I think what he said was totally stupid, but I don't think he was coming from a bad place. I just think he just said something totally stupid, because if you're going to go after folks who are standing in line to get goodies, let's start with the hedge fund managers who get this exemption for carried interest. And let's go with corporate America. So if he's talking about people standing in line, he shouldn't start with black folks, because we get such a small piece of the pie anyway.
He is a smart guy who has stressed on the campaign trail the outreach and the relationships and the things he's done that not every politician can point to. What finds him in that moment where he says, we're at disadvantage because we don't give them the free stuff?
But I've written incessantly about this in my column. This is Exhibit A, Bruce. When you don't have black consultants and staffers around you, you tend to get into this echo chamber. He's surrounded by a bunch of white aides, consultants, and so you never hear any diversity of thought. I guarantee you, if he had some serious blacks on his staff and around him, he would have never made that comment.
Do you buy that? He should hire you. He should hire you. And
you hear that, Jeff? You hear that, Jeff?
He should hire you. But the reality is race is in the DNA right now of the political season. I'm going to give you a case in point. And I said this in church on Sunday. When Trump stood up and announced, Trump talked about sort of Mexicans come across the border. And he says they're rapists and murderers. Not thieves and murderers, but rapists and murderers. Buying into that old hysteria around somebody black or brown is lurking in the shadows, waiting to rape white women. That's what he telegraphed out there. That's a part, it's sort of the calculated moves of playing the race card without saying that you're playing the race card. Right now, we're in sort of one of the most racially divisive debate seasons that's taking place, particularly on the Republican part, and everybody is in competition to try to tap into the angry white voter out there that they're saying crazy things, and even Ben Carson is saying crazy things.
Raynard, I know you want to jump in, and I want to hear from you in a moment, but I want to open the phone lines early to get you into the conversation, to get your thoughts and your comments into the discussion today with Raynard Jackson and Graylin Hagler. So for those of you watching live in the 11 o'clock hour, that's when we're live. That's when we can take your calls, and we enjoy doing so very much. So if you want to join the conversation, all you need to do is dial the number we've posted to the bottom of the screen. It's 703-387-1020. Again, 703-387-1020 with open lines now. So if you dial early, our chances of getting your comments onto the air are excellent. We'll go to the phones as your questions and comments come in. Republican strategists, people who are savvy, who are smart, who are thinking about how to win the White House this time and how to be relevant and successful in cycles down the road, white, black, brown, green, blue, and orange, are saying the party has to be inclusive, welcoming, and savvy in what it says and does to achieve those goals. To what extent does it pain you, and to what extent does it pain other Republican strategists that you deal with, to hear the sort of thing that Jeb Bush just said, and frankly, Reverend Hagler's critique on top of it?
Well, I would make a slight distinction. I think you can be stupid without being racist. Not every person in the party who says something stupid on a racial note is a racist. Sometimes it just comes from a lack of familiarity with various communities.
But all I'm saying, it's in the DNA.
I don't
it is
go along with
in the
that.
DNA.
But when you look at the Bush family, do you realize George W. Bush had more blacks on his staff and cabinet than even Bill Clinton?
It's still in the DNA.
Because
there is a whole context in which blacks are valued only if they fit within the white paradigm.
But same thing in the Democratic Party with KKK Bob Byrd.
Don't go back to KKK. Right?
Well, why not? It's part of DNA of the Democratic Party.
Because you're talking about the Democratic Party at another era, where basically those Dixiecrats came over to the Republican Party, particularly after Fannie Lou Hamer sat down, and then also particularly after the Voting Rights Act that Johnson signed. Folks felt again.
No, we don't have to go that far back.
Wait a minute. Southern crackers, excuse the language, felt that that was no longer their party and came over to the Republican Party. And then Ronald Reagan solidified the Republican Party.
And the same thing with Bill Clinton. He intentionally in '92 did that Sister Soldier. He did that Sister Soldier. And that's part of his DNA. Because whenever Bill Clinton gets angry at the black community, for you to call up Jim Clyburn when Hillary was running in 2008 and say, you don't want to fight with me. Jim Clyburn, one of the most respected people in all of Congress?
You ain't got no argument there.
Okay. No, I'm saying it's in the DNA of both parties. If we're going to go down that road.
The reality is the progressivism of a Bill Clinton is a mirage. Right, it has been a mirage because
I'm glad you admit that.
What we saw doing that was sort of again the continued and rapid expansion of the prison industrial complex. I mean, all those types of things that really devastated the black community, even while folks were running around saying, "Oh, he's our first black president." Had nothing to do with any realities that was going on in terms of policy. But what I'm getting at, if I can say this, Bruce, is that you cannot say it's just stupidity, because the reality is stupidity may be built on faulty facts, but it's still, it's racist in the DNA.
So it's in both parties. Would you concede it's in both parties?
As I said, it's racist. There's racism
in both parties.
In the DNA.
In both parties.
Raynard Jackson, I want to pick up on something that Reverend Hagler said in his first remarks when he talked about code words. What sort of coded language does this free stuff comment reflect? And what would you say to someone who truly, so your belief is that Jeb Bush said this in a mistaken moment, but for people who have the continuing belief that free stuff is part of it's part of the political problem we have in this country right now, what would you say to people in terms of what the facts are about government programs or whatever the coded language relates to? What would you say to that person or those people?
Well, number one, the function of government is to address problems. So if free stuff means you have health care or you have an environment where business owners can create jobs, especially minority business owners, if that's free stuff, then everybody should plead guilty to that. There is a role for this free stuff. But what happened in South Carolina with Jeb Bush, he said it in a way that made it seem like basically he had to go and buy and give Obama phones to poor folks in South Carolina. And that's where he went off base. Right. But again, this goes back to the lack of black consultants and aides around these Republican candidates. That's where they get in trouble.
If you look, though, at the statistics, the majority of conservatives and Republicans believe that black folks and other minorities get free stuff, right? That is denied them. This is the Dylann Roof argument of when he went into the church in Charleston, right, was that somehow now white people had lost their place. Because this myth is very much alive, and it's enlarged, and it's getting larger all the time.
But it's defied by the facts. If I can dovetail.
And more white folks on welfare than black folks.
Correct. And one of the things, you know, that we got to remember is that and you're absolutely right, more entitlement programs go towards the white community than it does the black community, just based on the size of the population, right?
Exactly.
First of all, right? And so the whole thing is that we're engaged in this mythology of race and racism. And that's what I keep coming back to.
But I want you to say it's both parties, though.
Oh, I'm not arguing with both parties. Okay. Right? I mean, what I'm saying is that there's something in the DNA that gets played and played off all the time. And so no matter whether you're on the right or the left, if you're white, you are basically, you've inherited that DNA trait.
I won't go that far.
Oh, you have. I think unless you examine it and begin to demythologize what has been your upbringing for so long. Because let's talk about it. Jeb Bush talks about free stuff. Jeb Bush is born with a silver spoon in his mouth. How in the world can he talk about somebody getting some free stuff?
Talking with Raynard Jackson and Reverend Graylin Hagler. We'll take a quick break here. We are back, though, as always, with much more right after this.